Happy May Day. I realized it was May 1st and I started remembering when I was in my early years of school, we would take ribbons and tie them around somehow. And each person had a ribbon and you went in and out. It was this weaving. It was a dance and it was definitely for May Day and it was a celebration. And there was kind of a couple different ways that we celebrated it. Um, I am consciously aware of the fact that my memory of knowing back then that it was a communist celebration, but I didn't know what a communist was at that point, so I didn't really, give it much thought. But we did this dance with the ribbons, and then as we would walk home from school, we would pick all the neighbors' flowers, and the teachers had showed us how to fold these little baskets, and they were these really cute, sweet baskets, and then we would take the neighbors' flowers and not necessarily give it back to the same neighbor, but we might take the flowers and go to the next door, and then you knock on the door and then you can run, and then the person opens it up and there's this little basket of flowers. And it was great fun and we loved doing it. I don't think anybody does it anymore, and I did kind of Google it to see just what was the communist part of it, and I could understand why they probably don't talk about it much because it had a whole different meaning than what it did to us when we were young. So yesterday, and actually both days of the weekend, I did kind of, I think I mentioned in one of my other videos, I was really interested in doing, becoming paperless on my genealogy project that I have. And it basically, the more I started working on it, then I started doing genealogy some more. And I had really thought about doing paperless on a family that I already had pretty much control of as far as, um, I didn't have a brick wall basically. But then again, I'm back to working on the priors where the brick wall is. And last night, I actually was looking through a newspaper and I actually found a copy of a obituary, and I do like to read those because a lot of times they're not exactly right, but a lot of time you can find information. So this was on Jesse Pryor, and that would have been my grandmother's father, and he was born in Iron Iron Hills, Iowa, and he was 77 years old when he died. Now, when I was back there driving around, I did go to this place, and this was the place that somebody said that there was just a motorcycle shop, and now the motorcycle shop was gone too. So Iron Hills is basically, it's not even a ghost town. I don't even think there was hardly any buildings there. But that was interesting. It did match up because this obituary came from Arizona where he did die, and then it says when he went to Canada, and so we sort of had heard stories. My sister especially had heard stories about him going to Canada, taking the family up to Saskatchewan, and homesteading was the whole thing. And the homesteading, I looked that up too. Also, was kind of interesting. Um, the homesteading at that time was 160 acres, but you had to maintain the um, land that was given you, and you also had to live there. And it always had to, somebody could come out and inspect it, and you have to meet that inspection of improving the property or um, building it so it's much more improved. And so he went to Canada and he took the whole family. The whole family was there, and I found records of that in Saskatchewan. Now, when they were up there, evidently most of the family, so my grandmother's mother took the kids and went back to Oregon. And Vera was the youngest of the kids, and she was actually born there. So at least I had that date to know pretty much whether it was, how long a stay that they were actually in Canada. And I had always, in all my records that I've been working on, and a lot of them were farmers, but it said in the obituary that he actually was a cattle raiser and he actually raised horses. Now, the horse thing comes in Montana also through a different family, but I think horse racing and purebred horses and raising horses was probably a lucrative business for a lot of those people. And maybe farming was just not cut out for him. So he did that. And then it was interesting because when he decided to come back to the United States, he had to um, fill out paperwork for reinstating him back into the United States. He had given up his citizenship when he went to Canada. And he came through, he took a train, probably him and his son Hugh took this train into Idaho, and then they filled out the papers in Idaho, Twin Falls, Idaho. And then they were making their way back down. Now, one of the other stories we had kind of heard from the family also was um, the one son. Uh, he died very young, but when I was checking the dates, it totally made sense in a way. So his son died, and then he came back to the United States. So kind of putting two and two together. The other family story that was always passed on and we always kind of laughed about was that his brothers also were in Canada and came to visit the family. And my grandmother, Jessie, uh, shared that story, and the brothers, all the kids were just so um, amazed that these brothers showed up and they had a 100-pound bag of flour for them. So it sounds like maybe it was kind of a hard life, harder than they had anticipated. But so he had to go through the reinstating himself as a United citizen, and he had to give up his rights to the king that he had connected with in Canada. So, and I have those records, and so that was pretty. It's just like synthesizing them all together, taking from here and here, um, and I will repeat this many times in my videos, but it's just kind of a fact that you may find wrong data in obituaries, in death certificates, in marriage certificates, just slight little human numbers. Definitely, we find them everywhere. So the spelling of their names when they change their names because they want to, continually shows up. And it ends up his two brothers, I have found, and actually communicated with one of the brothers' wife, I think. I have not responded back to her yet, but I'm in the process of. And she told me a lot more about the brothers, but they spelled their name absolutely the whole time they were in Canada, also, but they were more in Manitoba and further east in Canada. They went by the spelling of Payor, and that's Jesse was still going by Prior, with all his dealings through the different states, um, and it sounds like reading the paperwork, the petition for naturalization was like 4 pages long, and you had to denounce this. You had to say you didn't believe in polygamy, and it was quite a extensive paperwork that he had to do to get back in the United States. And in there, Hugh was the only one of the kids that was still with the dad, and then they went back to Oregon, and the I think the let's see what his name. His name was wasn't yeah it was Eugene, and he was only 14 when he died, and he evidently it was some kind of accident he had, and he was injured under his skin really, but his skin didn't bleed out, so the blood just kept going into, back then I don't know what they had for treatments, but he actually died of that at the age of 14. And so that was probably the reason why Jesse and eventually took, went back down. Now he didn't stay there very long, and that's a whole other story in regards to the family moving many places, and but they travel as a family, the brothers and the sisters and the kids and the grandparents, and a lot of times when you're following them around, the whole family's moving to stay together, which you don't quite see that as much anymore. I think during the pandemic, I think more people have probably did that. They would return to be closer to their relatives for this period of time. But back then it was absolutely necessary. And it's I still, so there was a reference to him and his son taking a train, and it was like the Canadian Pacific Railway that they were on to come to the border. But then I was wondering to myself, what he could have been carrying back. I don't know if he shipped things back, or if he left all his tools and he sold all his horses and cattle. And I don't know. There's a lot of unknown. And I have been to Canada on rock collecting trips and probably went really close to where he was, but I didn't know exactly where he was. And so personally, I really like to travel to the places and see for myself, and just, it's just, even the thought of a train back then, is amazing to me. I mean, I don't know, it was the mode of transportation for sure, and cars were not the cars that they are, and a lot of that hadn't really even started. I know when I was trying to find Jesse's, um, let's see, who was it I was looking for? And they died. And anyway, I just checked the checklist, and it was like, there was no cars. There were, how far would they go in a buckboard? Or did they drown in a river? Or was there a fire? And that's part of the brick wall, is trying to figure out some of those family members, and how they do fit um, into the story of this family. Um, let's see what else I had. I think that might be it for today. I'm getting more and more excited about getting this data all into one form or another, so that it's easier to report on, it's easier to research. Um, I saw a really cool video of a man who had been a lawyer for 40 years, and his son was a lawyer also, and he had been in his dad's firm for about 10 years, but he was young and totally paperless, and had a pump up desk that you could use, very modern type scenario for being healthier sometimes, if you can stand up and not sit down the whole day. But it was interesting watching this man, and he was a very, very prominent lawyer in his own right, but he struggled with the paperless part of it, because he just didn't want to let go. But they got him to the point where he started understanding and seeing how much better it was for him to actually be able to have all this stuff saved someplace. And I know with genealogy, I ran into that a couple times when I've been like in a class or something like that, and I hear these people, and they're my age or older, and younger too. And they're really stuck on that. They want the piece of paper to prove that it's there. And the most interesting thing about what he was saying was that he had a camera in front of in front of the screen like I do, and so instead of driving 35 miles down to the courthouse, going into the courthouse and waiting to get called for to go before the judge on his case, he could sit at home and he could have the camera all set up. So he actually, when the judge called his name, then he can show up and they can have their interaction. I think maybe some of it was just people not wanting to go out, but now it's catching on like wildflower. And I think that, you know, if I think we all can learn new tricks, it doesn't matter what we've done before, but there's some very exciting technology out there. So I'm going to go cook me some dinner, and thank you for watching my video, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Bye.